Hi guys, so one of the functions of select committees is to take evidence from the public and industry and then using that evidence inform the government and steer it into improving things for the public and industry. Now, select committees are made up of MPs from each of the parties of Parliament. When witnesses present evidence to the committee, it's important that they're challenged if necessary to ensure that they're not attempting to push an agenda or mislead the committee in some way. However, it can be the case that members of the committee have their own agenda and wish to redirect the evidence presented. Loder, one of the new Tories that arrived in Parliament in 2019, is a member of the Transport Committee. Here he can be seen badgering witnesses on who is responsible when it comes to the clear shortage of heavy goods vehicle drivers.
So, in terms of your ability to sit here today and speak on behalf of lorry drivers, how is that feasible when the organisations you represent have very clear, in some cases conflicting commercial priorities? Duncan?
I think that's actually a relevant point. And one of the things that we're planning to do in the very near future is to increase our engagement with the driver side of things. But our members bear in mind.
With the greatest respect, it's a straightforward question. Short answer, please. What qualifies you to speak on behalf of the lorry drivers across the country, given the conflicting commercial priorities you may have?
I think we're qualified because our members look after their drivers, particularly the SME members. They're very close to their drivers. They retain their drivers.
Okay, Elizabeth?
I'm not aware that I've got conflicting commercial priorities when I talk about the
may
logistics
I just
industry.
articulate what I mean by that? When you have your members such as Tesco's that announce £1 billion plus profit, yet on the other hand, which I think was an announcement in October, the beginning of October if I recall, yet on the other hand we hear quite often the inability to maintain HGV drivers in terms of their employment, and that is often referred to as a pay issue. For example, that's one example. So what I'm saying by conflicting commercial priorities.
Now, the problem with this is that they're not here, these people who are presenting evidence are not here to defend Tesco or Sainsbury's or some of these large corporations. But what Chris is attempting to do here is try to paint a picture of how there's a shortage at the moment, but this shortage is down to business. It's not down to government policy. So he's a Tory and he's here. Now, there are other Tories here, but Chris is trying to gather evidence so that he can go back to Parliament and claim, well, look, we've listened to witnesses, we've listened to the public, we've listened to industry, and this is a problem of industry. It's not a problem of government. It's nothing to do with Brexit. It's nothing to do with us ending freedom of movement or putting in barriers to bring people into the country, like Priti Patel did.
Is that there's very clearly very substantial organisations that declare enormous profits, yet on the other hand are saying, actually, drivers aren't being paid enough. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yes, I feel open and able to speak about all aspects of the logistics industry and logistics business in my position. I don't feel conflicted at all.
And therefore, would HGV drivers who work for those organisations you represent agree with everything that you say?
It would be very odd for every...
Would the drivers agree with everything you said? There are thousands of drivers and they all have different opinions.
Single member to agree with everything I said. I try to take a view from the feedback in our many council meetings and our interactions and our surveys and present you with the best evidence I can from the...
I don't know if you can hear him, but the volume is a little bit low. You can hear him say, yeah. So he's not actually listening to her response.
Industry to help you in your work.
And do you have any conversations with drivers themselves?
We tend to represent... we don't represent drivers themselves. It's the businesses that there will be drivers who come to our meetings.
So if you don't have that direct dialogue with the drivers themselves, how are you able to give substantial evidence to this committee saying that drivers feel this and drivers feel that and drivers want something else and drivers are not paid enough?
So you can see here what he's trying to do is he's trying to undermine them as witnesses, saying, well, we shouldn't actually listen to what you have to say because you don't represent drivers. But they're not there to represent drivers. They're there to represent the industry, logistics, cold chain, heavy goods vehicles, the haulage industry, in this actual inquiry, there are people coming forward to represent drivers, but it's not these three people. But again, he's not interested in actually hearing evidence. He's interested in collecting evidence so that he can present it to government, present it to Parliament, saying pretty much the government is off the hook here. The responsibility for this shortage is down to industry.
So I'm able to give it because we do survey work throughout our industry. Drivers will respond. All levels of the organisation will respond, and it's a collective view of what the issues and feedback is that they're getting from their businesses as well.
That's very kind. Thank you. Shane?
We represent employers. We represent employers. We're here to represent you as the voice of employers of drivers, not of the drivers themselves. You've got Unite speaking to you in a moment, who will talk to you about the perspective of the driver itself. There's definitely going to be lots of disagreement in the industry around some of these issues and differences of view between the employer and the employee. However, I won't be too pessimistic about that. I think that the vast majority of employers are very responsive to their drivers and listening and talking to them, because otherwise that's it's their business. One thing I would say is that as Cold Chain Federation, I have got Tesco as a member, but I'm not speaking for Tesco. I talk to people who are operating in the supply chain in those businesses, and I guess one of the fundamental questions of the pandemic generally is, are we starting now? Is it genuinely now a time where we're going to start talking about the value of supply chain within businesses and across businesses, and are we going to start investing in those things? Because we absolutely need to. Elizabeth said it earlier. The decarbonisation challenge ahead, the next 30 years, are all about supply chain, and we've got to start listening and talking about supply chain and prioritising that within businesses, and that means including the people.
I couldn't agree with you more that it starts prioritising the people. So can I just ask then, how many, and this is another sort of quick fire round with Duncan, Elizabeth, Shane, if I may, how many organisations within your membership will have at some point dismissed considerable numbers of drivers and look to replace them with agency members of staff?
Which is code word for foreigners. So what he's trying to do here is trying to ask, so how many of your members, the companies that you represent, have laid off staff and hired people from abroad, basically, on a lower wage? Of course, remember, this is about blaming industry for the shortage that exists at the moment post-Brexit, that his party is supportive of.
I wouldn't have expected that to have been a huge issue.
So when you say you wouldn't have expected it,
no,
are you saying it's not happened?
I can't say people have not done that.
Okay.
Right, but what I can say is that I am unaware of that actually happening.
Okay. So you're basically saying, and please correct me if I'm not correct in summarising, you're not able to categorically say today that none of your members have not dismissed their staff in favour of recruiting cheaper, often immigrant labour on a lesser rate of pay?
I would not believe that people have done that.
You can't say categorically that's not happening.
You can't say nothing. You can't say.
I see the issue there. You don't know. Is the point?
I've never had a case. I've never had a case come across my desk on that. Not
Elizabeth, could I ask you the same question?
I don't believe that I collect. Well, don't collect evidence on that.
Okay. Can I ask you to go back and ask your members this question? And can I ask you to write to this committee and confirm exactly whether they have or not done that? Because I have conflicting evidence that suggests that some of your members have done that. And I think it would be very good for us as a committee, as part of this inquiry, to really get to the nub of what on earth is actually going on with the HGV driver shortage in this country.
Well, we know what's going on with the HGV driver shortage in this country. You pushed through Brexit, you ended freedom of movement, which made it more difficult for heavy goods vehicle drivers to get back into the UK after the pandemic. and you put up barriers. You introduced an aggressive immigration policy, which made it more difficult for drivers to get back into the UK. And what are you offering these drivers in return? Temporary visas, 3-month visas, telling them to get out of the country on Christmas Eve. That's your solution to the problems that you have created, that you, Brexiteers, have created. And of course, you want to offload, and I said this, I don't know how many times, the modus operandi of the Conservative Party is to offload responsibility onto others. When it came to the pandemic, offload responsibility onto the public. When it comes to Brexit and the problems arising from Brexit, offload responsibility onto industry. And that's what he's trying to do here.
Because I don't think it is just as clear as to say that drivers aren't being paid enough. I think we understand that actually there are some drivers that are not paid enough and should be paid enough. I had a driver, an HGV driver in my constituency, write to me a few weeks ago, and he said to me that he left a profession to work as an HGV driver in 2004 and was paid £10 an hour. As of last month, so this is literally last month, he was earning £11.07 per hour. That's and then he goes on to explain as to some of the reasons why that is. So,
and what are the reasons? Well, he doesn't actually tell us the reasons. So somebody used to work for £10 an hour over 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 16 years, 17 years ago, actually. And now they're earning £1 more or less. And he's not telling us the reason. Why aren't you telling us the reason? Now, maybe this person is working part-time. Maybe this person is working for a different operation. Maybe they worked for a large corporation, large company before, and now they're working for a smaller company that can't afford to pay more. I think the wages are very low, but we need to know why that's happening. And Chris didn't actually tell us why that's happening.
Just so you know where I'm coming from with that, I would be very grateful if you would go back and ask your members that very question and write back to us with the answer, because that would be much appreciated so we can get to the bottom of that. Shane?
I don't know the answer, Chris. I don't know the answer to your question. I haven't got evidence, so I take your point and we'll go away.
Yeah. That would be much appreciated, and I would just, Duncan, ask you to do the same so you can actually ask your members that and tell us exactly what has been going on. And specifically, I think it's fair to say that we would also like to be crystal clear in terms of the percentage workforce that is directly employed and the percentage of the workforce that is engaged through agency staff. And then I think we will actually, as a committee, start to get to the bottom of this issue and why it is that we have enormous organisations that declare billions of profit every year, and yet on the other hand are very happy to dismiss their staff and then to engage temporary or agency staff at much lesser pay.
You need to present evidence to support that claim. You can't just make that claim. And what we're seeing actually is the opposite taking place. We've heard stories of Amazon, we've heard story of Tesco, Sainsbury's offering massive bonuses for drivers. Now, the problem, of course, is that there is a limited pool because of Brexit, because of the ending of freedom of movement, because of the new immigration rules. If there's a limited pool, what's happening is large companies who make billions of pounds in profit have very deep pockets, and they're willing to pay drivers a lot more to work for them. So the drivers who are working for smaller companies and are not happy with their pay and conditions jump ship and they join these larger companies where they're getting paid a lot more. But the pool does not get any bigger. The only way to make the pool bigger is to hire more people from Britain, encourage them to join, but unfortunately the pay isn't enough and the conditions are not good enough, or otherwise to bring people in from abroad. But of course Chris doesn't want to do that.
Perhaps we will work out the questions we actually want to put to you for supplementals.
Yes,
okay?
some will be able to answer, some we won't, because mainly our evidence is in here.
But mindful as I am of time, and those succinct.
So the problem with all of this is that there are people on this committee who have already made up their minds. The problem is not down to Brexit. The problem is not down to government policy. The problem is business. They need to take responsibility for this, and we're going to, of course, once again, offload our responsibility onto them. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?